Hey guys, so I've been asked this many times, Maya versus Blender, industry standard, all that kind of stuff, and I wanted to make a video about this topic for a very long time, and I think the opportunity is very good now because I worked 1 year and a little bit in Blender and almost a year in Maya, so I can very easily compare the two of them. And for the people who initially asked me why are you switching from Blender to Maya, because I started in Blender, well, because of the job. So I got hired at American Truck Simulator and I worked there for a couple of months. And then I worked some more in Maya, making assets for Cities Skylines, and then I switched back to Blender. And then again, people ask me, why did you switch from Maya to Blender? And so on and so forth. And yeah, let's address this topic. And I want to make like a comparison, like after using both softwares uh, for the same amount of time and also as work. Yeah, I think I can give some good input. The input is gonna be more towards City Skylines because that's what majority of the people who watch this video is for. But it's gonna cover a couple of other things as well. But first of all, let's discuss a little bit about the industry standard discussion, which is annoying me. Like it's so crazy. First of all, Blender is adopted in many studios. Like I don't get why people have this crazy idea. I think people refer with industry standard as every single studio on this planet to use Blender, like the software for industry standard. And that's never ever gonna happen. Sure, Blender is adopted by many studios, and like I don't know. The first example that comes to mind is Rust, the Rust game. Like all the modelers are making the weapons in Blender, and yeah, uh, but it cannot ever be like integrated into the pipeline. By pipeline, I mean when you model something and then you export it, send it to a different department, and they do some other things like animate, then they composite it in Nuke, and then they send it back, and then and so forth, and so on and so forth. That can never happen with Blender because there are many tools and plugins written decades ago, and it would be too costly for the companies to switch everything to Blender. And it's not like you can just write a few lines of Python code and magically everything is going to be incorporated into Blender. It's far more complicated than that. Yeah, and it's a matter of cost. But still, as I said, Blender is used by many professional artists, many studios, big, small, whatever. So I don't get this question. And the idea is if you ever want to work in the industry and get a job, you should learn Maya. Like at least watch some tutorials or whatever. If you want to do this strictly for hobby, like making assets for City Skylines or whatever game you play, then do Blender. It's just tools. And of course, Blender is free and open source. Maya is paid, but you can get it free through various methods or be a student or whatever. But if you, for example, Maya is extremely strong for animation and VFX. So if you want to learn animation, like start with Blender. Maybe you don't even know if you're gonna like it. So why not start with the free software? Yeah, and like I said, Maya is extremely integrated with the professional pipeline. It has so many custom scripts, custom add-ons, and so on. And you can't compare. What I mean is you can't compare it with add-ons that you find free for Blender. It's not like that. It's like custom shaders. Like for example, in Maya, at work, I don't know how much I can talk about this, but at work we had different custom shaders directly integrated into Maya. So to give you an example, like I could see easily the illumination map directly in Maya. Or a different thing is like American Truck Simulator uses different multiple UV channels. So if you want, for example, to make a building in City Skylines and then you say, oh, I want to add some stains here, you have to use the rotor shader, right? Well, in American Truck Simulator, you have multiple UVs. So, for example, I have this entire building which uses the diffuse, right? Which is on one UV channel, as you already know. And then I can make another UV channel where I add only stains. And then I can just multiply the channel, the stain channel over the diffuse channel. and I can do this directly in Maya. So those are custom things that have been written for this studio. And then you have to take into consideration many big AAA studios like use their own engines, which is insane. Like for example, Star Citizen or whatever. And yeah, it's Maya is Maya or 3ds Max or whatever. They've been since forever, and they have custom tools and yeah. And this whole idea of this video about which one is better or pros and cons and so on, which I'm going to discuss, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And if you get a job, you don't get to pick. Like you can't say like, oh, you guys work in 3ds Max. Yeah, well, I know Blender, so I'm not going to. Yeah, no, you have to learn it. So you learn what the studio works with. And I want to point out that you're transferring the skills. If you know Blender, you know Maya, you know 3ds Max, you just have to learn the hotkeys and all that. It's really easy to pick up other software quite fast. You're just transferring the skills. It's not like you can work only in Blender. Like I'm a good artist only in Blender, but I'm a shitty artist in Maya. It's not like that. So yeah, they're just tools, and one is better at something than the other. And yeah, but the thing with Blender is it tries to be like the Swiss Army knife, and that's good because it gives people the chance to learn and experiment and try different things and so on and see what they like. But Blender will never ever beat Maya. Well, never ever, but it will never beat Maya in animation or VFX. In Blender you can do sculpting, but you can not do it the way you do it in ZBrush. You can make video editing in Blender, but you cannot do it the way you do it in DaVinci Resolve. You can sculpt clothes or whatever, but you can never do them as good as you can in Marvelous Designer. Blender has retopology, but it's garbage and it can never be as good as dedicated software like Topogun, and I can keep going and going and going. Whatever you want to do, is there's like a specific tool for it, and you can't say industry standard Blender, I want to sculpt in Blender. Sure you can, and there's a lot of art done amazingly well in Blender sculpting, let's say, but it can't beat ZBrush because ZBrush is so dedicated, and again it has custom add-ons and scripts and all that. So yeah, they are just tools. Like stop this thing with industry standard and focusing so much on Blender or which one is better, and so it's insane. You know, it's like people are marrying themselves to a single piece of software, and then they are becoming extremely obnoxious about it. Like, wow, Blender is so much better than Maya. Maybe for what you do, but yeah, it all depends. They are just tools. Instead of having this constant debate, like focus on developing your skills and yeah, instead of becoming extremely familiar with one software and marrying with it, and then you don't know how to transfer your skills to a different software. But yeah, so that was my intro. I think I should start mentioning now, after using both softwares for such a long time. Well, it's not really a long time, but I did use them for quite a bit. I'm gonna go and discuss like the pros and cons of each one. Yeah, so I don't know where to start with, but for example, first one that comes to mind is like in Maya. This is Maya and this is Blender. They look the same because I really like this layout and user interface. But yeah, in Maya you can have camera based selection off by default, and it's this thing here. Like if I'm selecting I don't know, something like this, or I don't know, let's do like this. See, like I'm also selecting the vertex in the back. Like see, I'm selecting both vertices. In Blender you don't have that. You have to go into, so whatever I select, it's always gonna be selected what the camera sees. So if I want to select the vertex there, I have to go into X-ray mode, so Alt Z shortcut for me, and yeah, like let's say I want to select those two, and that's very annoying to me. Like I wish Blender had the same option as Maya does, so I can either turn it on or off, but by default to be off, because I'm not a retard. Like I know if I have the camera like here, I'm gonna select both vertices, but yeah, like if I want to select only this one, I can just move like there, like not having to go through custom menus and whatever. It's yeah. But again, that's just me, preference or whatever. Uh, if we talk strictly City Skylines, Maya has a very, let's say, rudimentary viewport, like what you see here on the screen, in terms of lighting. And it's very easy for me to go into use flat lighting and then compare my diffuse and all that and see how it looks. This is extremely good. And the solid shading is amazing. Blender has a way better viewport, like way better. The shadows, the cavities, and all that stuff. However, it's not useful for me for City Skylines. Like I don't need cavities. I don't need how are they called? I don't even know where they are. Like around here somewhere, whatever. I can't find them now. But yeah, I don't need all that. Like I just want to be able to see the diffuse simply and so on. So I had to make my own custom script here and turn between solid shading and flat light. And also I made like my own custom studio material to have the light, the solid light on the viewport the same as Maya, because it's just way too good, because it's so simple. For other things, yeah, Blender wins, absolutely. The main issue is Blender's UV mapping. Like I just can't understand how a software so old has such an absolute garbage UV toolkit. You can argue with me how much you want, but read online. Like Blender will never ever compare with Maya in terms of UV toolkit, and like look at all of the options that I have here, and yeah, like it's absolutely insane how many options I have here to work with UVs. And in Blender, you don't have any of that. Like you just have here a couple of buttons, and yeah, they are absolutely garbage. So for Blender, you have to rely on custom add-ons. Mainly, I use text tools and text cell density. Like this is decent. Like you can arrange, align, and yeah, all that, but still it's extremely hard to unwrap in Blender compared to Maya, because Maya has this amazing toolkit. I'm not gonna go into history of this, but yeah, you just can't compare it. You have to rely on add-ons for Blender, and even with them it's a bit weird sometimes. And it's easy to say, oh well, yeah, but I just unwrap a building, but try unwrapping a more complicated model. Like I'm not gonna, I don't know, like a teacup or I don't know, a shoe, or I don't know, something. I know majority of you guys don't do this, but I'm just trying to prove a point that it's so complicated to do this in Blender. It's crazy. All right, more advantages of Maya. Let me think. I think the entire thing with the pivot. So this is the pivot, and you have to constantly move it somewhere or whatever. I think this is a bit more intuitive and more logical, because I don't know, like if I want to work with the normals of the edge or whatever, like it's so easy to align the pivot here and then work from here. But in Blender you have to go through all this menu and do all that shit. It does have some disadvantages, mainly in snapping, but that's I'm gonna talk about snapping later. But I feel like this pivot manipulation is more better, more intuitive, more yeah. Something where Maya really stands out is highlighting nearest component, and that's a thing that you can actually disable, like here. It's an option, but I don't know why we'll ever turn this off. So look at the cursor, right? It's right in the middle of this face. If I move it down, like I'm already here, and it's already highlighting. It's not selecting. It's highlighting the nearest edge or nearest component. Okay, so I can, let's say I want to select this edge. Like I can just go here until it highlights, and I can just click and it's already selected. Okay, in Blender you don't have that. So I noticed that there is a little bit of selection closer. Like see, I'm clicking here. Let's say I want to select that. I'm clicking, and it already selects it, but it doesn't highlight. Like I really like this highlight, because it's so easy to select things, and I'm gonna show you why. Let's duplicate that and move it here like that. Okay, so now I have two edges on top of each other. Okay, and let's do the same thing in Maya. Oops, I have something in the back. You will have to pardon me because I haven't worked now in Maya for a while and I don't remember the shortcuts. So yeah, now I have two edges here and the same in Blender. Okay, so let's say I want to, from this face, I want to select the right edge, right? Okay, I'm just coming here. I see that it's selected. I click and then I move it. Okay, let's say I want to select the left one from this face, the left edge. I come here, click, and yeah. So it's always closest to the mouse cursor. In Blender, this is absolutely retarded. I'm trying to select now the right edge of this face. I'm clicking there. Okay, this time it worked. So now I'm trying to select the left edge of this face. I'm clicking here. I see a selection, but no, it's the other face. Like it's so frustrating. Like if I want to move this edge now, I can't. Like the left edge of this face. So I have to move this one first, and then I have to move that, and then place this back. Like it's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Yeah, so Maya is really good at finding the closest shit to the cursor. Like even here, like look how the vertices are highlighted. So it's really from the middle of the face. Another really cool thing is like in for Cities Skylines, when you make assets, it's really important to not have floating vertices, meaning vertices that are not connected to anything else. And right now, I know that there's two edges here on top of each other, right? I don't know that. Like, I know that because I did it, but I don't know how to say. Like, I don't have a visual representation of that. Well, no, not true, because you can go here in Maya, and you can display borders. And sorry, so you can, it's gonna make the thickness of the outside border more more thick, and you can clearly see that this means that there's disconnected vertices. So I just go here and I merge them together, and now I can see that this is merged. Okay, I hope it makes sense. In Blender you don't have that. You don't have anything close. Like I couldn't possibly know that there's two vertices here. So yeah, I have to go into because if you do this, you're still not merging. You can't select both of them because you don't have camera-based selection off. So I have to go into wireframe mode, select everything, snap, merge, and you can see remove two vertices. But it looks exactly the same like that. It's so complicated to know if you have overlapped vertices. So that's a big plus for Maya as well. Another plus for Maya, Maya has an incredible multi-cut plane. So in Blender, like, let's say I want to make a cut across this entire thing here. Well, in this case, it would be easy to add like a loop cut, but let's say you don't have that option. Okay, maybe the mesh is different. So the tool is here, and then I have slice along plane, and this is extremely useful. So what do I want? I want the Z and X. Okay, so I have this interactive plane, which I can move up, move down, and you can already see how it's making the cut. And this is a preview, like I can always hit escape. Yeah, and there you go. In Blender, you can do the same thing, but it's a bit more complicated, and you don't have the plane interactive, so I can't move it up or down. Like the moment you make the cut, it's there. So that's, yeah, it's weird. It's not something that you use often, but yeah, when you want to use it, Maya is more better at this. Another thing that really annoyed the shit out of me is the hotkeys. And for somebody who always modeled in Blender and now you are switching to Maya, you will say, oh my god, Maya is so garbage with the hotkeys, blah blah. For somebody who modeled only in Maya and switching to Blender, he will say, oh my god, the Blender hotkeys are so garbage. It's always the case when you switch from one software to another. However, Maya has industry standard hotkeys, while Blender doesn't. And that's a very important point. By industry standard hotkeys, I mean how you move the camera, pan the camera, zoom in, zoom out, all that kind of stuff. It's usually done with the Alt key. And then I don't know, like stuff like moving, like uh, scaling, S scaling, and R rotate, and all that. Well, in Blender you have G to move. Like what kind of shortcut is that? Like it's so retarded, and everything in Blender revolves around the shift key for panning and zooming and all that. Now I completely configured the Blender to behave like the industry hotkeys, but the annoying thing is, like, when you work in Blender, like let's say with the native hotkeys with shift, panning, and all that, and then you export your mesh for Substance Painter, or I don't know, like maybe you do something in Marmoset Toolbag, or I don't know, many other softwares. All of the other softwares use the same hotkeys, right? The same as Maya, or Maya uses the same as the others. Blender doesn't. So it's so annoying. Like when you switch from one software immediately to the other to do something there, like let's say I made a building and I want to render it in Keyshot or Marmoset or whatever. I have to go and I can't move the camera because I don't understand. My mind is so focused on moving things with Shift key in Blender. Yeah, and there's so many hotkeys which are the same across multiple softwares except Blender, and yeah, that's really silly. Now, what else? I think in Maya it's easier to make loop cuts, or it's called connect here. But let's say I have all those three parts here, and now I press Shift C to connect, and now I can just move the mouse wheel. And yeah, I press the mouse wheel and move it left and right, and I can easily introduce as many loop cuts as I want over here. In Blender it's not like that. You have to go into right click and subdivide, and then I go here, and let's say that I want to move them a little bit. It's a bit weird. It's not bad, but it's a bit weird. I far more prefer the Maya version, the Maya way. It's also much easier to make scripts in Maya, and if you have been following me for a while, like I made these intense utilities in Maya, and I also made it in intense utilities here in Blender to have everything that I really want in a very easy way. Maya supports two scripting languages. One is MEL, MEL scripting, and Python. Blender supports only Python. I know a little bit of Python. Well, since I made those scripts, but it's not like I'm extremely good or anything like that. However, scripting for Maya is way easier because it's much easier to select different elements that you want in Maya. Like let's say I want to make a shortcut, like a button here, which is always gonna press this word properties, and it's gonna set the color to red every single time I press this button. It's so complicated in Blender to select this button here, then this, then that pop-up appears, and then you have to select red. Like it's so weird. In Maya it's much easier to select to play with the selectors, or I don't know how to explain. Like it's much more intuitive in what you want to achieve with the scripting. Yeah, what else? So my mind is thinking now about comparisons between Blender and other softwares. And for example, in Maya, which I already said, it's extremely good for animation. Like it's so much better for retopology and making hair and fur. I know nobody here who watches this video does that, neither am I, but you can't do that in Blender. Like it's insane. But in Maya it's much easier. Okay, so I think those are the pros. Like nothing else is coming to mind for Maya. Yeah, maybe anti-aliasing. Like Maya has its own features. Yeah, but discussing about Blender's pros compared to Maya, I really like that you can set up here as many workspaces that you want. Okay, and the user interface is extremely customizable, and you can do exactly the same thing in Maya. Like I can add as many shelves here. It's called shelves. Or layouts or whatever. I can do the same thing in Maya, but in Blender it's a bit more nice. It's I feel like the UI, the UX of Blender is a bit better. It's preference only, Some people might say that Maya has a very good user interface, and I can't argue with them. But for me personally, I think Blender has it a bit more clean, a bit more minimal, let's say. Yeah, and it's more modern. I think the user interface is more modern. Uh, the biggest advantage of Blender compared to Maya is cycles render. Uh, Maya has Arnold. It's called Arnold rendering, which is not bad. If you know how to use it, it's really good. It's really powerful. But you can't, like, I don't know, like Blender is so good, and I know so many artists who make weapons and different props and whatever, and they actually render in Blender cycles because it's just so good and incredibly fast. So yeah, major win for Blender for cycles rendering. And previously, like majority of people were rendering in Marmoset toolbag or Keyshot or other rendering softwares. But yeah, since cycles got updated with version 3.0 or something like that, when it became extremely fast, like I see so many people switching to Blender. It's insanely good and fast. Um, Another thing which I really like about Blender is snapping. Because let's say I want to snap this face directly here. So I just press G and hold control for snapping, and I just move my cursor there and it's already snapped. For Maya, you have to do it in a different way. So first I have to move the pivot here or to this edge, and now I can snap there. Yeah, I feel like Blender is extremely quickly, because if I just want to do this, like look how fast I can do it. So yeah, it's insane, because right here where I just want this face to be on top of those, right? So I just press Control D and I immediately move the cursor here, like I'm not releasing. So I just press Control D and now click. Control D, click. Control D, click. It's insanely fast. I love the snapping feature of Blender. And I remember when I switched from Blender to Maya because of the job, the thing that annoyed me the most was the snapping. Like I see it's so weird that I have to constantly move this pivot whenever I want to make a manipulation. And yeah, it's also annoying that when I move the pivot, like I move it here and then I move the face, it stays in that place. Like I wish it could follow this thing. But anyway, the pivot has its own advantages, like I already discussed. But yeah, snapping, it's insanely powerful in Blender. What else? The modifiers. The thing is, like, well, this is again for something extremely professional work, not really for Cities Skylines or whatever, but you can stack multiple modifiers. So let's say I want to transform this cube or building or whatever in several ways. Like I can add so many modifiers stacked on top of each other, like bevel, subd modeling, and all that. In Maya, you can't really do that. Again, this is something extremely specific, which I never use, but I watch videos and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy in Maya to do that, but in Blender it's so easy and makes so much sense. What else? Yeah, Blender doesn't have the retarded history that Maya has. For example, I manipulated this object quite a lot of times, and now everything is here. Right? See, so you have this entire history. So I started with the cube, I extruded the face, and then I moved it and extruded again, moved it, and so on. So it remembers, it's like a Control Z, a history of Control Z per object, and that's insane. Blender doesn't have that. It's just simple Control Z. It's not based per mesh. Okay. The annoying thing, sometimes this is having its own advantage, but in general, this can create so many issues. Like I remember one time I had to make a building at work, and I worked for like 3 days, and I fucked something up. The history was butchered, and I saved. And then when I opened the save file, the building was completely fucked up. Like it's really important to constantly clean the history. Like if you're satisfied with what you have right now, you just go and delete history, and now everything is done, so it's clean, and this cannot be affected anymore. In my experience, it can lead to more issues than benefits of having that history. Maya also has this dynamic Blender, not Maya. Maya has this dynamic edge length, which is I feel like it's very useful. Like if I want to make this face here exactly 7 meters, like I can just go here and you know, like just arrange it something like that, okay? But in Maya, the way you do that, you don't have this edge length. Like you snap it there and then you move it like exactly 7 meters in that direction. It's more buttons to press, it's a bit more annoying, it's not visually, and yeah, if you don't care about extreme perfection like 7.001, like this is so much quicker to have that visually there. I think the main benefit of Blender compared to Maya is in pure modeling, and that's maybe just my opinion, but I feel like talking strictly modeling, Blender wins, for me at least. I feel like you can be not much, but I feel like you can be faster modeling in Blender compared to Maya. However, the point where Blender really shines compared to any other software is, but not something that we do, is it's incredibly useful for concepting, for making concept art, because of EV, which is a real-time renderer, whatever. And because you have add-ons like hard ops, box cutter, and so on. So for example, for hard surface modeling, you know, let's say you want to make ships for Star Citizen or whatever, I don't know, sci-fi stuff, anything. Like it's so much easier and faster to do this in Blender. Like it's insanely fast, and especially with the tools like hard ops and box cutter, which improve dramatically the Boolean workflow of Blender. Booleans in Maya are absolutely stupid. I tried for a long time to make hard surface models in Maya and to rely a lot on Booleans, and even with add-ons, it's so silly. It's absolutely so silly, and that's one of the reasons why I switched back from Maya to Blender. One is because I want to make tutorials for you guys for Cities Skylines in Blender, because it's easier for you guys to follow and all that, but also because I want to toy around a little bit with hard surface objects, and Blender really shines there. Okay, so I think I'm going too much about this, and honestly I don't think I have any other pros and cons of Maya versus Blender, but in the end, remember, they're just tools, and yes, stop this nonsense talk about industry standard and whatever. They're just tools, and yeah, sure, shortcuts are weird, hotkeys, whatever. Just learn. You just have to learn. Like stop. I don't know. Stop this crazy talk about this. All right. I don't know if this was interesting for you. By the way, guys, if you want to know how I made Blender, like how I have it set up, especially for Cities Skylines asset creation, let me know. I might make a video about this in the future. All right. Take care. Peace.